Hey future Calgarians, if you're thinking of relocating, whether it's for work, school, or you want a change in lifestyle, you're in the right place. I moved to Calgary from Vancouver just over 3 years ago, and making any sort of big move like that is gonna be a difficult adjustment. So before you pack your bags and move out here are some crucial steps you're gonna wanna follow to make sure the transition is as smooth as possible. In addition, I'm also gonna be touching on a few things that I wish I had done differently looking back. Hey everyone, my name's Nada. I'm a licensed realtor here in Calgary, and I help people buy, sell, and invest in real estate. However, today I'm hoping to be your guide in going over everything and every step that needs to be done before you move to Calgary. I make all kinds of Calgary and real estate related content, so if you're into that sort of stuff, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss another video. Now, I've broken it out into 8 steps that I've also put in chronological order so you can follow along as you go through the moving process. Before I go over each number on this list, what you will need to do will completely vary on your own circumstance, so you can take the list as sort of more of a guideline. I'll try my best to cover everything, but please make sure to do your own research as well. Now, the first thing you're going to want to do is line up a job. And if this is the reason you're coming to Calgary in the first place, then congrats, you already have step number 1 done. But if you're someone who is moving into Calgary and you don't have a job lined up, finding a job right now can be a little difficult depending on what industry you're looking for work in. Calgary has especially high demand right now for healthcare workers and trades jobs, so if you're someone who is in any of those industries, then it should be relatively easy for you. In general though, the first step that you should be doing is researching roles and finding different work opportunities that align with what you need and applying to those jobs. Make sure to network, update your resume, and apply to as many jobs that are applicable to you as possible. If you're someone who needs to move over and you don't necessarily have a job lined up yet, make sure that you have a nice nest egg to fall back on, because moving's stressful and you never know what could happen or difficulties that you could face in the job market. Now, the second thing you're going to want to do is neighborhood and city location research. This is going to be one of the most important things that you should do prior to moving. It would be really terrible if you just picked a random neighborhood and you ended up stuck in a lease in a place that you don't like living in a neighborhood that you also don't like. I always tell my clients who are buying that location is the one thing you can't change. If the interior isn't perfect, you can always put money towards renovations, but you always first and foremost want to make sure that you're in a spot you're comfortable with and know. So what I suggest for this is figuring out what amenities and things you want or need to be close to. If you have kids, for example, you probably want to be in a really good, safe location that's maybe a little bit more suburban and has some good schools nearby. Places like Edgemont, Springbank Hill, or Altadore, etc. And if you're a young couple or someone who's single, you're probably going to want to be more in the center of the city, by downtown, in locations with a ton of amenities and ton of things to do close by, such as Beltline, East Village, or maybe even Bridgeland. Furthermore, I would suggest looking into things like crime statistics, neighborhood features, and maybe doing a price comparison of what it costs to live in each specific area. There are quite a few safe and sought after neighborhoods in Calgary that are still relatively affordable. I would also recommend using websites like Area Vibes so that you can see a livability score and ratings for a particular area, and it also nicely breaks down each feature of the neighborhood and what it would rate that specific feature for. Step number 3 is going to be visiting the city. And I always recommend doing this prior to moving, and this is where your neighborhood research pays off, because now you get to go and visit the areas that you liked, to go and see them in person to see if it still lines up with what you thought it was. This will truly help you get the best sense for what each community is like, as well as the amenities and local activities that it has to offer. Calgary is divided into 4 quadrants, including the northeast, northwest, southwest, and southeast. Each of these quadrants have their own pros and cons, so if you're someone who's not picky, visiting even each quadrant in general and driving around is going to give you a sense in where in the city you generally want to be. Step number 4 is going to be setting your budget. Calgary is getting pricey, and depending on the lifestyle that you want to live, it's going to be important to set realistic expectations and go over what things on average cost in Calgary so that you're best prepared. Now, if you're someone who's not thinking of renting and you're maybe thinking of buying a place, what you want to do at this stage is talk to a mortgage broker to see what you can afford to buy reasonably so that you're not overextending yourself. If you are someone who's planning on renting, I suggest hopping onto a website called Rent Faster, which is a really popular rent website in Calgary, and from there you can search up the specific neighborhood that you want to be in, and you can go over what rent prices typically are in that area so that you can see what you're comfortable with. Coming into Calgary, the largest part of your income is probably going to need to be allocated to rent, mortgage, groceries, and utilities. Not including rent or the mortgage, the average cost of living for a family of 4 in Calgary as of August 2024 is $5,700, whereas for an individual, it's about $1,600. Rent for a 1-bedroom in and around Calgary's city center would run you about $1,700 to $2,500. The median price for a single-family detached home right now is just over $700,000, and assuming you did 20% down on that, your mortgage payments would come out to around $3,800 a month, but this is totally going to depend on your interest rate and your amortization. Now, I know these numbers still seem pretty high and pretty scary, but we are in Canada and it's getting to be a really expensive place. We're still about 18% cheaper cost of living wise compared to Vancouver, and that number is including rent. This is why it's so important to budget before you make the move over. You don't want to be in a position where you're financially extending yourself and you can't do the things or activities that you love to do. Make sure to budget for other things as well, such as transportation, eating out, entertainment, or even self-care. Your own personal budget will depend on the specific lifestyle that you're looking to live after your move over here into Calgary. And the 5th thing you're going to want to do is figure out your housing and accommodation. Alberta's rental vacancy right now is very, very low, so finding a rental is going to be a little bit tricky and it's going to take some strategy. Unfortunately, realtors in Calgary don't help with rentals, so you're going to be on your own here for the most part, but I will go over some tips and tricks on how to find one. Tenants on a month-to-month lease will need to give 30 days notice to their landlords prior to moving out. This means that most places that'll be up for rent will be at the end of the month. This is the time when you want to be really aggressive in starting to look. From there, you want to make sure that you can get in to see the place as soon as possible or book a virtual showing and make a really good impression on the landlord. Another thing that can help is filling out your rental application in a really timely manner and in as much detail as possible so that the landlord can really get to know you and see what a good applicant you are. In terms of the best sites to find rentals, I would really suggest using Facebook Marketplace or Rent Faster. Those are the 2 really big websites in Calgary that are constantly being updated with new rental listings. The best option really is to rent an Airbnb or Vrbo while you're here so that you have some time to go in and look at places in person to minimize any risk. You could even complete this step during your initial visit to Calgary, and step 3 once you know what area or community you want to be in. Now, if you are someone who does want to buy in Calgary, there's a couple things to know about the Calgary market and a couple obstacles you're going to need to jump. The Calgary real estate market is moving at a really fast pace, and we have tons of demand but still relatively low inventory. Before I was licensed in real estate and I moved to Calgary, I contacted a realtor who I liked and trusted, and what I actually did was I came out to Calgary for 3 or 4 weeks, and then we did all of the showings in person, and then once I found a place that I liked and we had an offer accepted, I went back and I basically let my realtor handle the rest until it was possession. If you're a bit more brave and don't have the time to come over here, you can also ask your realtor for virtual showings, but please make sure it is someone that you trust and someone that's not going to be salesy towards you and blindly push you into something that they know you're clearly not going to like or that doesn't look good in person. The last option you have in this scenario is to complete virtual showings and put in an offer conditional to viewing, and then book in a last-minute flight during your conditional probationary period to go in and see the property in person. I'm not really a fan of this option because number one, the market's super competitive right now, so it's hard to get an offer accepted with that condition in it in the first place. And number two, booking in last minute flights can be really difficult and really expensive. And if you don't end up liking a couple properties, that's going to run you a lot of money really quickly. Step number 6 is no fun, and that's setting up the move. Now, I would highly suggest not moving in a bunch of big furniture from a different province if you don't have to. If you're in a situation where you can start fresh and sell off that old furniture, it might be a little bit easier to get some new pieces shipped to you for the date that you're actually moving into the place. Furthermore, if you're someone who doesn't own any furniture and you're looking at rentals, you can always opt to go for places that are fully furnished. Or even if you're someone who's buying and you haven't put that offer in yet, you can negotiate pieces of furniture in the house that you might like to stay with the property for your possession, so that way you have a little less to worry about. If you do need movers, you should book these at least 4 weeks in advance prior to your move-in date. If you have a pet, you're going to want to make sure that you make arrangements for that too, whether it's driving them over, having another service drive them over, or maybe putting them on the plane to get them here. Something to note too is that if you are bringing a pet over, you do need to have a pet license, and you can register your pet for this really easily through the City of Calgary's website. If you are bringing a car over, make sure to make arrangements for it to be transported, or if you are planning on driving it over, make sure you plan that out ahead as well. I brought my car from BC directly, and I actually drove it over myself, and it's about a 10 to 11 hour drive, but I knew I couldn't do that in one shot, so I broke the drive up and stayed in Kelowna for one night. So if you could do something like that, I do highly suggest it. Furthermore, this is also around the time where you want to make sure that you have your utilities set up to start on the date at which you move in, if you do need to get utilities, or that you have your renter's insurance set up, your home insurance set up, and that you have other things like internet booked in for those dates as well, so you're not struggling for the first couple days of your move. The second to last step is going to be paperwork and getting your ducks in a row. Now, if you are moving in from a different country, make sure you chat with an immigration consultant, because this is probably going to be a lot more hefty for you, and I'm not in a position where I can really advise on what you should be doing. If you are moving from a different province, there's a couple things you need to do, but I actually did all of this stuff once I moved into Calgary, and Calgary is great because it gives you a little bit of a grace period with that, but there's also some things you could do beforehand if you wish. The first thing you're going to want to do is sign up with AHS, which is Alberta Health Services, and you're going to want to do this within 3 months of moving into Calgary. If you have a car you're bringing over here, you also want to make sure that you get your Alberta driver's license and your car registration and insurance all set up here within 3 months of moving over. And if you are bringing that car over from a different province, you might need to have an inspection done depending on the age of the car. And I know in my situation, I had to have this done, and I remember after the inspection, I had a little crack on my windshield, and it was of a certain width that they made me replace the entire windshield to be able to register it and get car insurance in Alberta. This is also where you want to make sure that you changed all of your mailing addresses and you didn't miss any. And if you bank with any of the big banks, you're going to be fine. There's TDs, CIBCs, RBCs, all of that kind of stuff here. You can also switch to ATB, which is Alberta Treasury Bank. That's a big one here, but you really don't have to if you don't need to. And step number 8, last but not least, is going to be celebrate, because the headache is finally over and you've managed to successfully move to Alberta. Go out, grab some nice dinner, drive around the city, get a drink, and relax. Now I'm gonna go over my biggest regrets from when I was moving and some things that I wish I would have done differently. I know my biggest problem for sure during the move was being organized. Something that I've seen a lot of people do and a lot of my clients do is that while you're moving, you get one box and you label it and you have every kind of necessity that you need in there for while you're unpacking. For example, something really great to put in this box is going to be plastic forks, plastic knives, plastic spoons, paper plates, some towels, some self-care products, a couple changes of outfits, some cleaning products, anything that you need really easy access to so that you don't have to go in and fish into 7 different boxes. One more thing that I really suggest doing is grabbing a couple days off of work or whatever you need to do so that you can just focus on unpacking and getting everything set up so that way it's not lingering on and carrying on and you're kind of stress-free and ready to do what you need to do. Otherwise, you're gonna drag out the unpacking process and you're gonna feel overwhelmed and like you haven't really settled in properly yet. So I would really recommend just taking a couple days off to do what you need to do. The last thing I forgot to mention is don't forget to plan for Calgary's climate. It does get really cold in the winters and it does get really hot in the summers, and it is a pretty dry place, and you want to make sure that you're prepared for that and you have all the things you need prior to coming over here. Hopefully this video was helpful. Moving can be a lot to endure, but it also means that there's going to be a lot of new exciting things for you to discover and a lot of new adventures for you to go on in a new city. If you have any tips or tricks or any advice that you would love to leave for anyone moving to Calgary, I'd love for you to put that in the comment section down below. If you found this video useful, make sure to like and subscribe and hit the bell icon for more videos related to this. And if you are planning to buy in Calgary and you need some help, I'll have my Calendly linked right down below, and you can book in a free, no pressure consultation with me, and I'll go over all the neighborhoods, parts of the cities, and anything you need to know prior to moving.